So marketing is about where a company and society meet. It's everything about that relationship. It's not just about advertising, which is awareness raising in its generalised form. And it's not just about selling. If you start with a selling approach, then that's pretty much a disaster in terms of marketing, because what you're doing is you're putting the company at the heart of all innovation rather than putting the customer at the heart. And you could say, and some have said, such as Kotler, that we've been through sort of two big phases of marketing, that you started with an era very much of make and sell. And then you have the dawn of the marketing era, really, and what's known as the marketing concept, which is really a whole business philosophy. And that's about seeing the business as being everything about what a business does, being focused on the customer, and the customer driving everything that happens in the business. And that's been termed a sense and respond era. And that's very much connected to a neoclassical economic view of individuals and of the firm. And so in that respect, companies are not really supposed to care very much or do very much to influence what customers want. It's more about trying to understand them and then deliver on that. Basically, we, in the last few decades, have been moving towards what you could see as a new philosophy of marketing. It's one that I believe is critical for marketing, and what I term this as guide and co-create for sustainability. And this is an era where marketing recognises its leadership role. It's hand in hand with customers and with an understanding of the bigger picture and the longer term picture in terms of sustainability. Marketing is in a really good place to be able to make that evolutionary step, because there are a few things that have changed in recent years. And it's firstly the idea of long-term customer relationships, because if you can invest in the relationship, then what you do is you spend less investing in the relationship than you do in terms of recruiting. Secondly, different views about the firm as a whole in terms of, for example, the stakeholder view of the firm, and that is about companies realising that they don't operate in a vacuum and that it isn't just about financial. As we said, it's not just about financial profit, and it's not just about returning financial profit to shareholders. There's a view that's coming through as well that customers are citizens and citizens are customers. And so again, compartmentalising people who buy your product as one sort of person and seeing them only as consumers is bad for society, but it's bad for the company. And another thing is that companies are really starting, we've talked about branding for many years and it's come up the agenda, but people are really starting to realise how critical their brand is to their value. And that when we talked about that right to trade, that very much is also keyed into their brand, which is why companies spend so much on PR. It's part of that deep brand building, but also in terms of their campaigns. In fact, everything that a company does should be about their brand building. I was commissioned by Friends of the Earth to write a big idea for them around sustainable marketing. In terms of the key question was, how can we reform marketing for sustainability? What we outlined is a standard, really, a framework for evolved marketing. So it's a way of trying to standardise and codify the 6 foundations, what we say are 6 foundations for the framework of evolved marketing. Firstly is pursuing a relentless focus on understanding real primary needs through offerings that are environmentally, socially and economically sustainable. So by that, we're talking about the fact that many people have established that there are universal needs that as a human being you need. Needs like relaxation, participation, love, etc. So if marketers are focusing on those underlying needs as the starting point of innovation, then they are in a good position to be able to maximise the well-being of society, of customers, in the longer term through the constrained resources. The second foundation is that marketing needs to acknowledge its critical leadership role in society, which is something that I talked about earlier. Thirdly, marketing needs to recognise and build upon relationships, again something I talked about earlier, and many companies would say they're doing that, but this is about really taking it to a deep level. Fourthly, adopting a long-term sustainability mindset. So this is really about the issues around short-termism that people know affect all kinds of business. How can we create a more long-term mindset that considers sustainability. So that's really about culture change. Fifthly, taking a rigorous approach to measuring sustainability of all marketing decisions. And again, that's about key performance indicators, KPIs. It's about starting that discussion so that there are standardised ways of measuring sustainability in marketing across sectors. And those might be sector specific or they might be generalised. And lastly, to put marketing at the heart of all organisational strategic decisions. So that sustainability can drive the organisation from the customer, because that's what marketing does. But at the moment, in many cases, marketing is a sort of a function on the side. So in summary, and this is something Kotler and colleagues said back in 1969, marketing can be one of two things. It can be a sort of way to dupe customers into buying the next thing that they don't need. Or alternatively, it can be about efficiently serving society's needs for the long term through deep and lasting relationships. And really, and that was Kotler's idea of societal marketing, that's really what at the heart of what sustainable marketing is. So I really feel that social enterprises should be the driving force of sustainable marketing, and really I would love to see social enterprises at the cutting edge of implementing and working out the details around a framework for evolved marketing. Because at their heart, social enterprises formalise and develop the idea that what is good for business is good for society. It's that coming together of that shared value, and that's what social enterprises for me are really about. Of course, you know, in an ideal scenario, you wouldn't have social enterprises, because if businesses really truly embraced a multi-purpose model where profit was only one of the ways in which you judge business outcome, along with all the other transformation of capitals, then business would be operating as social enterprises. But while business puts profit as above and beyond everything else, rather than a means to be able to deliver other value, then we desperately need social enterprises to be there and to show the way about how this can be done. Really, I feel that is social enterprises' underlying USP, in that they do show how business can be a force for maximising well-being of society through the scarce resources that we have. And while businesses are not doing it, that's what social enterprise is doing. And no matter how social enterprises are positioning themselves in terms of cost, quality, or any other factor, because of course there are hundreds and thousands and millions of social enterprises operating in all kinds of market positionings. The one thing that needs to hold on to is that identity about making the world a better place, and to grow that identity, and importantly to create amazing stories around that through the conversations that it has with customers and potential customers and society as a whole, and get that story heard. The majority of social enterprises are small businesses, and many small businesses, not just social enterprises, I really feel are often lacking in their branding. And as I said earlier, branding is absolutely critical. And by what I mean by small businesses lacking in branding is that that business may kind of know who it is, or someone or one or two people in that business may kind of know who they are and what the focus is, but it's often implicit and not explicit, or perhaps it's felt like it's explicit, but actually from a customer perspective and societal perspective it isn't explicit. And often when you're so close to a cause, you forget and you believe in it, it's very easy not to make that passion explicit. We forget, as individuals as well as in business, to package up what we believe into something that the business can agree on, and which can be continuously communicated both internally and externally. And that is about having a strong brand, is about doing that. It's about being able to understand the identity of a business and therefore be able to trust and have a relationship with it. Because social enterprises are just like larger and more complex individuals, and as humans, and you know, an interaction is only ever ultimately at the level of a human to a human. even with these other structures that we have. And as humans, if we don't know who that someone is, be it a business or anyone, we can't tell people. And if we don't tell people, then they feel like they don't know us, and that they feel that they're not close to us. And then they won't trust us, and they won't want to spend time with us. If we're inconsistent in our message, or we don't take the time to explain the small things, you know, what was our day like? How did this experience change us? Then we lose the basis of trust and connection. And all those principles that you can apply to an individual and another individual, or another individual and a group, because those group relationships, that social identity is also very critical. Then if you can't do that, then you've lost the basis of your relationship. And I think one of the main reasons for business failure is the dehumanization of us, of individuals within businesses, and of how businesses present themselves. And so we all need to act more human, really, in order to be able to do excellent business. And that's where I think social enterprises have a particular role that they can play. So I was involved in helping set up Bread and Roses, which is Plymouth's key social enterprise entertainment venue. I'm sure many of you have experienced what a lovely place that is. When we started that, we talked a lot about bringing the story and the identity of the place to life. And much of those plans have been implemented. I have to say I was only involved very much at the beginning, and many people have put a lot more work into it than I have. But it was very much about bringing the story to life, and how do we do that? And anyone that's been in there, I'm sure, can see those different stories. But I'm just going to bring out a few of them so it makes it clearer what I'm talking about in terms of how social enterprises can really make the most of what they are. And of course it would be different, very different for every single business. But for example, in Bread and Roses, one of the key aspects of the identity was inclusivity. So not judging people, but proactively trying to engage people of all different backgrounds. So ways in which that's manifested, that brand identity is manifested, is, for example, through hosting a wide range of community meetings of various different groups of people who might not normally drink in the same place and might not necessarily get on, but the idea is that everyone is allowed a space and a place to express themselves. And that's related to the second part of the identity, which is expression. And very much you can see art is integrated into everything. The consistently intriguing posters that you see on the side of the window, even for really very small things. And if you go in there, you can see the way that sort of expression comes out. And then doing things differently. And you can see these all are related, because you have to have parts of your identity that make a coherent sense, really. So doing things differently, not stocking the usual brands, actively not stocking them, keeping prices as low as they can be, or stocking less ethically perfect brands sometimes, or alternatives, so that price accessibility can be maintained. That's connected very much to the inclusivity part, because if you try and do everything as absolutely ethical as you can, then in order to be able to profitably run a business, you lose the risk of actually alienating large parts of society that can't engage. So it's getting that balance, and obviously in social enterprises that's always a challenge. That's also connected to being environmentally responsible, which is right at the heart of it. So trying to go for organic fair trade wherever possible, or local. And being socially responsible, which connects with fair trade, but also subsidising, for example, a refugee football club. So those are some of the ways in which the brand identity of Bread and Roses is expressed. And the idea of an identity is that you should be able to know, and anyone who has understanding of that brand should know in any circumstance, what kind of decision would that brand make, would that company make. And the same as with a person. I know that person because I know in that circumstance the kind of decision they would make. And if you have that level of relationship and understanding, that's where you can really move forward. So it's really about being connected to the social purpose, but bringing it out through an integrated marketing strategy in everything that you do. And of course there are minimum standards to that identity that come just with being a social enterprise. And I think making those clear as an industry is very useful, so that living that and making the most of that social enterprise brand, as well as the brand of that particular cause and the particular culture that drives what that social enterprise does. So in summary, social enterprises have one key thing that most for-profit businesses don't have. They have a truly compelling story about purpose that is waiting to be told, about a love of humanity, about care and compassion and innovation and the potential of humans to make the world a better place. That threads through everything that a social enterprise does. Businesses can do it, but it's something that is part of being a social enterprise. If that story can be told clearly and consistently enough, and that story can permeate through everything about the business, all customer interactions, all done with the same care and respect that you do for that social purpose, and with that same culture at its heart. If you're a fun-loving business, it's done in a fun way, etc., etc. And if the joy of the story can become connected to the customer's experience buying that product or that offer, doing something as mundane, for example, as perhaps drinking tea, then there's nothing stopping a company in that respect, because it's that experience and that human connection that humans are wanting to feel. And in many, many customer interactions, we are not allowed, and we're certainly not promoted to feel like that. So humanizing that process of being a citizen through what we consume is something that social enterprises can capture and really make the most of for the benefit of themselves and society. And that further knock-on benefit of making that story salient is helping people experience the joy of helping others. If they're helping others through purchasing from that social enterprise, but they don't really feel that joy of helping others, then there's a lost opportunity to affect them at the level of their identity. And at the moment, in the Centre for Sustainable Philanthropy at Plymouth University here, we're very much focusing on how, for example, marketing in not-for-profits affects donors. And so what we're really talking about here is, how does marketing within social enterprise affect society through customer experience? And I think if social enterprises can really understand sustainable marketing, therefore, and do it really well, then I think both society and social enterprises will benefit.